Welcome back to the Rich Eisen Show. Remain Seated starts to be available today where all Comedy Dynamics platforms are found. Places like right here on the home of DirecTV. It can be on DirecTV, Apple TV, Spectrum, Comcast, and of course, Amazon Prime Video. Check out again, Remain Seated, available today from, again, the Comedy Dynamics platform and the comedy from the very dynamic Larry the Cable Guy here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Larry?
Rich, I've never been called dynamic. I appreciate it.
Well, you know what, Larry? I just it's called Comedy Dynamics, and I just figured you're the comedy dynamic guy when it comes to that. You know what I mean?
I have not seen you since that time I run into you at the Super Bowl about
forever.
3 years ago.
It feels like forever. Do you have a
Came
team?
on, I did a little Mater thing for your kids.
That's right. My kids can't get enough of that, Larry. They can't get enough of that. That's right. You must get that all the time, right?
What's that?
You must get that all the time, right?
You know, it's really cool. I do get it a lot, and I always, I'll get requests all the time, so I usually take a day a week, and I'll sit down and I'll do some birthday calls for some people that have kids in the hospital or something, and, and I'll do little Mater stuff. It's fun. I enjoy it. It's funny when I walking down the street or something, and somebody with their kids, and the parents, they'll recognize me as me, and then they'll go to the kids, they'll go, that's Mater, and they kind of look at me, and then I go, just like tomato without the tongue. Boy, you ought to see their faces. I mean, it's pretty cool. That almost killed me, though. I put on 700 pounds to do that character.
Come on, Larry.
That's right. That's it, Rich. That's how good I am at voiceovers. I'm the only person that puts on weight to do voiceovers.
Well, I mean, you got to become the toe, right? You're a method tomater is basically what you're saying.
Exactly.
Oh,
exactly. So now I'm taking it off. I tell you, this whole staying in and being quarantined, I told my wife, I said, I'm not going to allow myself to sit around and eat all day. So we're not as, in Nebraska, there's not that many cases, so they allow us, we can, if we want to, we can go for walks and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So believe it or not, I'm down about 21 pounds since the end of February.
Look at you, Larry. I mean, you've lost the quarantine 20. That's pretty impressive, man.
Gosh.
So
it's been bad. I knew I had to do something when I got on the trampoline, and January, I did 2 jumps, and I had to get off of the trampoline. I wasn't tired. I had to get my kids out of a tree.
That's the counterbalance. That's the counterweight. You got to take that into effect. You got to take that into account when you're hopping on the trampoline, Larry. That's for damn sure.
I know. I do got to say, though, I would go on the internet in the morning and check out what's going on. Somebody has leaked naked pictures of me on the internet.
Oh, is that right? What is that? What happened there, Larry?
Well, unfortunately, the pictures are from an overhead late-night camera. So I must have been on my way to Arby's or something about midnight.
I feel like I love this. I'm playing the straight guy to Larry the Cable Guy right here on the Rich Eisen Show. It's fantastic. That's what I do for a living. I do love it.
Rich, you know what?
Yeah.
You know what's hilarious? I got to tell you, because I do all one-liners. It's one after another. I've always been a fan of all the old-time one-liner guys.
Right.
And so I remember the first time I was ever on the Tonight Show. My manager said, "Don't let Jay say anything because he'll interrupt your punchlines." I said, "Don't worry, I can handle it." And I'll never forget the first time I went on the Tonight Show. Jay Leno introduced me. He said, "So how's it going, Larry?" And I did not stop talking for 8.5 minutes. He didn't. Honestly, I don't think he got one word in. It was great.
We call that in the sports radio business, sports talk business. That's pulling a Joe Theismann, right, Chris? That's when you just.
Yes.
Joe Theismann, the over-under on Joe Theismann's first answer to your first question is about 4.5 minutes, and I'd suggest you take the over sometimes, Larry. That's the way it works.
That's so funny. I just talked to Joe. Joe plays in my golf tournament.
No
I just
kidding.
got done talking to him yesterday.
How long was his first answer to your first question on the phone?
You know what? It was we were talking about some kind of a cream to put on your back, so he was all business. But generally, I'll text him. That way I can. I'll tell you another funny thing.
Yeah.
Terry Bradshaw, the same way. I remember a long time ago when I was coming through the ranks, Foxworthy's a buddy of mine, and he was sitting at the house, his cell phone rang, and I looked at it, and I go, holy smokes, it's Terry Bradshaw. I was all stoked. I go, Jeff, it's Bradshaw. He goes, let it go. I'll call him later. And I'm like, what do you mean you'll call him later? He goes, man, sometimes Terry just never gets off the phone, and I don't have time.
Larry, the cable guy, I would pay to watch a conversation with you and Terry Bradshaw. That would be what we call good eats. That would be amazing.
He was actually, had him in one of my Christmas specials. I did 3 Christmas specials. He played the bartender in one of my Christmas specials. I got to tell you, it was fun. It was one of my favorite scenes I ever did in a Christmas special. I love the guy. He's just all full of happiness and joy. He's great.
Yeah, Terry, I think was it Smokey and the Bandit 2? Was that his big film debut?
Oh my!
Back in the day, it was Hooper or something like that. I just remember Terry's been a Cannonball Run, maybe? I don't know.
I think it was Cannonball Run. I know what you're talking about. Right now I'm having a brain fart, but it was one of those.
Me too. Larry the Cable Guy here on the Rich Eisen Show. Do you have an NFL team that you're a fan of specifically?
Well, yeah, I do. I grew up a huge Oakland Raider fan. I don't know why. I remember when I was a little kid, I sat down when I was about 6 years old, and my grandpa was watching a black and white TV. It was a Steelers-Raiders game, and I said, that's my favorite team. And he said, which one? I said, the one's in the white. And that happened to be the Raiders. I love their helmets. And then from that day on, I just became a huge Raider fan. And then about somewhere around the time they got Jay Schrader, I kind of wobbled and then I was living in Florida from Nebraska, and so the Buccaneers were closer to me. So, I still followed the Raiders. I was kind of searching for another team, and then in the '90s, I saw Brett Favre in the late '90s. Brett Favre was wearing a "Get Her Done" Larry the Cable Guy T-shirt in a spring game. And then I just became a huge Packer fan, and then I married my wife. My wife went to a school in a small town in Wisconsin, so I just adopted the Packers and went full bore Packers. But I will say, I know it's a crime to like 2 teams, but I like both of them. I like the Raiders and the Packers.
That's fine. I mean, it's certainly if Favre is wearing a shirt with your phrase on it, I mean, that's the end of that, Larry. I mean, that's...
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, you can't... And I actually went to like 3 games. I got to sit in his box next to Deanna. My wife was there and went down and ate nachos and cheese with his special recipe. I mean, he was awesome. Now, I do feel bad, though, because I know more about the Raiders than I do the Packers.
That's fine. That's all right.
Let me tell you this quick story. I remember... before I ever got into golf, I got into golf about 10 years ago, but I was working at a outdoor event, beautiful, and I wish I could remember the name. It's in Northern California, overlooking a huge lake, and they always had a golf tournament there, and I went there. I guess I was the entertainment for the golf tournament, and they asked me if I wanted to go to the pairings party, and I said, no, I don't golf. I don't even know what it is. I'm just going to go backstage, kind of enjoy the scenery, go over some jokes, and so I go backstage, and she came back in. She goes, boy, I wish you'd have went down there. They were asking if you were going to come down there. I said, well, what is a pairings party? She said, well, every year we have a golf tournament, and it celebrates an NFL football team. And this year it was the world champion 1976 Raiders. I about crapped my pants. I said, you got to be kidding me. And I said, are they coming to the show? She said, yeah, a lot of them are in your meet and greet. And by gosh, that night I met Ray Guy and Freddie Bolitnikoff and Cliff Branch. And I mean, it was awesome. And that was one of my biggest thrills in comedy. Being on stage and looking at the third row and watching Freddie Bolitnikoff doubled over and laughed.
That's it.
I'm telling you, that was one of my all-time favorite shows.
Well, as long as you didn't shake hands with Lester Hayes, because your hand would have stuck to his, Larry.
Yeah, no kidding.
You'd have that stick him on.
I will say, though, that Ray Guy was backstage with us. He wanted to stay backstage with us because my opening act was from West Virginia. and my manager was from West Virginia, and so he stayed backstage with us and stood off the side of the stage. And for about an hour and a half after the show, he was bitching at all the sports writers about not making the Hall of Fame at the time.
Well, he can't do that anymore. Can't do that anymore.
I know. Now he's finally. But I'll never forget, Rich. He goes, "Man, they just don't know what the hell they're talking about. It's not how far you hit the ball, it's where you put the damn football."
That's exactly right. You're not wrong. I love it. Larry the Cable Guy here on the Rich Eisen Show. Did you base your initial act about the cable guy on a specific cable guy? Is there a real cable guy that launched this ship, Larry?
No. You know what, Rich? I grew up on a pig farm in southeast Nebraska in a town of 1,200. And I went to college at a Baptist college in Georgia. And my roommate was from Dalton, Georgia. My other one was from Beaumont, Texas.
Okay.
And when I started, when I started doing stand-up, of course, one of the first comedians I met was Foxworthy.
Okay.
And, of course, I was always integrated in the Southern culture from moving to Florida and going to school in Georgia. And then I met Jeff, and, I just started doing characters on stage. And Jeff and I used to sit at the Atlanta Braves spring training games in West Palm Beach all the time. And he's like my adopted brother. I mean, we're so much alike. But we would sit there and we would just riff off each other, and we just make up stories. And so I remember we'd be sitting there, and one time Jeff would just lean over and go, "Hey, Jubal, did Peggy get that potato salad in, or did she forget about that on the truck?" And I was like, "No, they came and got that last week. 2 of the kids were poisoned." And we would just make up this story. And so one day, when I was doing stand-up, I went on stage and I was trying to find. Originally it was a rodeo bull rider, didn't get much response, and then I remember Cable Guy came to my house and he was confused about the house he was at. He couldn't find a house or something. And so I made a whole thing about this Cable Guy, and it just stuck, and it got big laughs. And so I got asked to do a character that on the radio station, and the rest is pretty much history. Just kind of kept getting funnier and funnier and growing and growing. And I'll be honest, I never in a million years ever thought of doing it on stage.
Right.
It just happened. I was at a comedy club in Sarasota, and my buddy Les McCurdy put Larry the Cable Guy, a.k.a. Dan Whitney, which is my real name, and it sold out 2 shows in like 30 minutes, and I got done. I was signing autographs, and it was crazy. So he told me, he said, "You think you can do your whole show like that?" And I said, "Well, daggum, of course I can. I mean, I can talk. I can talk like a redneck all day long. I mean, that's who I hang out with. We're all buddies." So I went on stage, and I remember I put on what I drove over in. It was a pair of laced-up Roper boots, a pair of jeans, a cut-off Nebraska T-shirt, and a NASCAR hat, and I went on stage for the first time. And, the rest is history. It's a complete gift of God. I mean, everything that's happened to me in my career, it just happened. I never really sought it out. I just wanted to be a funny comedian and make a pretty good living at something I loved. And, man, doors just started opening.
And it started with you riffing with Jeff Foxworthy, watching Dale Murphy and Terry Foster play for the Braves. Spring training.
We used to sit in the Glenn Hubbard section where the Hubbard sign was.
Glenn Hubbard. I haven't thought of that name in forever. I remember him. Oh yeah.
And I'll tell you something else. I just sent Paul Bird a message yesterday. He replied to one of my tweets yesterday, but one is like probably the third time I ever went on stage at an open mic night was at a dance club in Boca Raton, Florida. And I had made friends with Zane Smith and Dwayne Ward.
Yes. I haven't heard those names in forever. It's the Superstation. I mean, we were talking TBS Superstation, Skip Carey, you're talking old school, like Sutton and, those guys.
Way back in the day, yeah. And they drove all the way down to Boca Raton. They sat there on the side of the stage to support me in my third time up. But yeah, I was a huge, huge Braves fan. Still am today, and it's always such a thrill for me when I get to these charity golf events.
Yep.
And there's the group in front of me, Smoltz, Maddox, and Glavine, and now we're buddies. Now I know them all, and it's just, oh, my gosh, I pinch myself every time I play in those things.
Well, you definitely want their stick in your group. That's for damn sure. You want you want to play. Those guys are phenomenal at golf. All three of them.
Yeah, they were no kid, especially Smoltz. Smoltz is starting to pick it up.
It's insane. So now you've got Remain Seated available today, where all of Comedy Dynamics network platforms are available. Tell me about this one, Larry.
Yeah, you know what? I don't really stray much from what I told my wife. I said, I didn't think I could write any more Walmart jokes, but by God, I found 7 more minutes. So,
that's great.
There was more to be written, I guess. But, it's like I said, I was always a fan of the quick one-liner setup punch guys.
Yep.
And there's not a lot of us out there anymore, Todd Yon and Jeffrey Ross, and there's a few of us. But it's just a fun style, and I love it. And so that's basically what it is. I hadn't done my own solo album. I've got 3 or 4 of them out, but I haven't done one since like 2010 or 11 because I've done other projects like Jeff, Bill, and I did Them Idiots, and then Jeff and I traveled together, and We've Been Thinking. And so when you're doing one-liners, it takes a while to get a whole new hour. And so one day they just called and asked me if it had been a long time since I'd done one. I looked at my act and I said, man, I really only need to write about another 15 minutes and I can do one. So let's go ahead and do it. And so I worked on it for about a year and man, it's just like, it's just like the regular stuff, just quick one-liners about different topics. The only thing that's different now is I got kids and I'm a lot older and I'm a lot smarter and I make sure that everything's so people can laugh at it. So I don't put any politics in it anymore. I think people are sick of that. I just want to be funny, make people laugh, and I think I would call it. I told my wife the other day it's PG-13, pretty good for 13 minutes.
I love it, phenomenal, and the album is going to be available on April 10th through SiriusXM, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, Pandora, SoundCloud, and more. Before I let you go, Larry, we're having a conversation here, just apropos of nothing. Do you like the ends of bread, or do you just stay away from that when you're eating a sandwich? Where are you standing?
No, I'll be honest. I love the ends. My wife gets mad because I take the ends, and she says that keeps the rest of the bread safe. But I immediately go to the front and the back. I don't know why, but I've always loved the ends.
Oh, so your wife objects because the ends protect the loaf's, I guess, longevity, and when you take it away,
from what I understand, it protects the life of the bread. But I go ahead and I eat the ends.
Okay, and your go-to sandwich is what, Larry? What's your go-to sandwich?
My go-to sandwich? Well, if I make it with bread, obviously I'm a cheeseburger guy, but
okay.
If I make a sandwich, it is ham. It's honey ham. With American cheese and Doritos and mayonnaise pushed together and pressed.
With ends of bread. With ends of bread.
With ends of bread, yes.
That would get it done. That gets her done.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. My kids love it.
I bet. Larry, thanks for the call, man. Let's chat again soon.
Rich, I love you, man. I'm a big fan, man.
Thank you.
I appreciate everything you do.
And thanks again for doing that recording for my kids a couple years ago. They loved it. They absolutely flipped out.
Oh, you got it.
You're the man.
Thanks again. I hope you enjoy my special.
You bet. Remain Seated. First stand-up special in over a decade for Larry the Cable Guy. Available where all Comedy Dynamics platforms are available. The Comedy Dynamics Network, again, places like Amazon Prime Video, Comcast, Spectrum, Apple TV, DirecTV, and more. Thanks for the call, Larry.
You got to get her done.
Ladies and gentlemen,